But without further ado, let's bring our guy in, man, who knows more than we all know, all the information that we need to know. My man, Alex Shapiro. Man, Alex. All right, without getting into
Alex.
specific players, how bad is it from your point of view so far?
First of all, thanks again for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to join you all again. I see it two ways. One is, as we alluded to, it's still 2.5 weeks until the regular season starts. But the other side of the coin is by the end of practice today, 21 guys were not participating. And if you extrapolate that to a 53-man roster, they got 91 guys right now. But if you extrapolate that to a 53-man roster, that is nearly 40% of a team. So it's like, it's hard to get work done during practice when so many guys are out, especially on the offensive line. On the offensive line, to me, it is more worrisome because it appears like the Bears are just back in that offensive line blender like we saw at the beginning of 2022. And to me, that's where I have a level of concern. Here's the other thing is we don't know the level of injury for most of these guys. The Bears have come out and said Tevin Jenkins is week to week, which to me indicates that's a serious injury because everybody else has been day to day and they've missed multiple weeks, right? Like day to day can be week to week and in many cases has been week to week. So like, am I full blown DEFCON 5 panic mode right now? No. But I mean, there's got to be a certain level of concern that, you know, guys are not out there getting their work in. And now, like, if there are not improvements, I'm sorry, I'm just like, I'm going off. I'm taking this little question, I'm running with it. But if I am Matt Eberflus and I don't see significant health updates on the offensive line, I have a little trepidation throwing Justin Fields out there for the last preseason game. Now, I would imagine the Bears would, Matt Eberflus has said they want to see Justin Fields playing another preseason game. And I believe Justin Fields needs more work in a preseason game. Like, this offense needs to get some live reps with live tackling before they're ready for week one, in my opinion. But if Cody Whitehair with one hand, you know, because his right snapping hand is wrapped up big time, playing guard, and Braxton Jones are your only two healthy starters, I would be worried about throwing Justin Fields out there in the preseason.
I think you should be. But before we get into specifics of the old line, I know you said there were somewhat like 21 people out. How many of those guys were on bikes and trying to ramp up?
All of them. So only a few guys were just totally MIA. Trying to think. For the most part, every single guy who was out is doing some sort of calisthenics, whether it's on the bikes, whether it's doing plank core work, et cetera, et cetera. The Bears do a pretty good job of trying to keep those guys wind up, you know, so that it's a shorter ramp up. Now, I mean, the ramp ups have been confusing because the ramp ups have been up, the ramp ups have been down, the ramp ups, you know, it's like, it's hard to keep track of who's ramping up and who's had a setback, but we're calling it a ramp up. But for the most part, all of the guys are getting some sort of cardio work in on the sidelines.
Hey, by all accounts, you know, Eberflus runs a very intense training camp. By all accounts, you know, I think Darnell Mooney talked about it the other day. Do you see that playing a part in all these injuries? And I haven't heard Flus talk about that much. And has there been a scale back now that all these injuries have occurred?
No, not really. I will say the Bears made the decision to go inside today because of the heat, which I think was a very good decision. I think it would have been really tough and possibly dangerous to practice outside. So they moved it inside the Walter Payton Center. I have not noticed a downtick in terms of practice tempo. I don't know what to assess all of these injuries to. It is worth noting that it feels like 2 years in a row. I didn't go back and look at the exact numbers, but I feel like last year there were also a decent amount of injuries at this time. So I would imagine they're going to assess everything. We'll see, you know, what types of conclusions they make, but I just not having the facts or not being at other training camps. I'm so dialed into the Bears training camp. It's not like I can compare it to the Bucks training camp or the Lions training camp or you know what I mean? We're so dialed into the way Eberflus has done things. And again, I started Matt Nagy. So my only point of reference is how Matt Nagy did things. And the pace of practice was definitely slower with Matt Nagy. I see Matt Nagy in the chat. Boom. I remember you from our rush days. Good to see you, Matt Nagy. You definitely ran a little, I don't want to say it was slower tempo. Now, again, like, is it the players? Is it coaches being overly cautious at this point in the year with about 19 days or so to go until the regular season? Is it the strength and conditioning coaches not getting them properly done? Yeah. Is it the pace of practice? Is it any number of things? Is it the recovery that they're doing? There are a lot of things along the way that could be leading to these injuries. I don't know enough to point at one thing and say this is the problem, this is the issue. But I would be shocked if the Bears don't, after this year, really evaluate the way they were doing things to see if they can keep guys healthier next season.
Absolutely.
Before I ask you this question, I being someone that's used to intense practice, I do believe that you practice like you play. By the time you get to the game isn't overwhelming for you. It's not a shot to the system. Like, wow, I'm out of breath. And, it's you've already built that throughout camp. So with that being said, I'll say they should always evaluate after every year and see how they can do things better at every time. Absolutely. But I know you guys have some margins that you have to stay in when talking about injuries and what happens out on the field. But everybody wants to know what's the deal with Cole Kmet. And I know you can't get into specifics about how it happened. I don't think. Am I right?
You're correct. We're not allowed to say specific injury observations. I'll put it this way, though. So Cole Kmet, we were instructed to say, like, Cole Kmet left the practice field on a cart. He was not carted off, So there's a distinction there in that wording. Take from that what you will. I think there's like a clear line. I'll just lay it out there, because I feel like, why do this hemming and hawing? It didn't look like a serious leg injury, right? Again, it was a hot day outside. We see guys taking carts to and from the Walter Payton Center all the time. I'm completely speculating at this point, but I don't think it was a serious leg injury. But again, he did take a cart off the field back to the facilities.
Well,
jeez.
Go ahead, Sam. You got anything?
Jeez, it's just no. I just think that we're all just have to be optimistic right now and hope for the best and hope that it's just a lot of caution being taken. But what hurts the most though is you have new guys like Edmonds and our defensive end Walker, who haven't really had any training camp, and they've been day to day since the beginning of training camp. So,
right.
Yeah, so you don't know what to make of it. And it seems like Alex is just as perplexed as we are.
Well, hey,
Alex, it's perplexing.
So what about the O-line? What's the rotation looking like with guys out now? Who's taking the first team reps as of now?
So that's, again, something I cannot.
Oh, yeah.
I can't dive into that. But rotation is the right word. What I think I can say based on what we view in individual drills, in the shooting periods, different guys are getting different looks pretty much at every position that's not left tackle, which is Braxton Jones, and now left guard, which is Cody Whitehair. And I am able to say that Cody Whitehair's hand is very wrapped because, again, we see that during the shooting periods. Matt Eberflus has addressed that. I asked him point blank, like, can this dude snap the ball with his hand? He did not answer, but he did address that, the hand is super wrapped. From what I can see, I don't think he would be able to snap the ball with that hand. Now, again, Matt Eberflus calls that day-to-day. As Samo just alluded to, Guys have been day to day since like August 3rd. So we shall see. We shall see. But other than that, like this is another thing I can report. Lucas Patrick didn't participate today. Again, don't know why. He wasn't out there. So I mean, you can go down the list of guys. The list of guys who are participating in the offensive line room is getting smaller and smaller. You can infer from that list who's doing what.
Wow.
Certainly testing the depth that we thought that we may have had on the offensive line. Have they talked about trying any guys out, or did you guys see anyone coming in today?
No, didn't see that. Sometimes you can kind of see that as we walk to and fro. Haven't noticed that. But here's what I will say. I would definitely expect the Bears to really be watching on cutdown day, next Tuesday. So 6 days from now, the 29th, the entire league goes now from 91 or 90 players down to 53. It's not staggered like it used to be. So there used to be opportunities as cutdowns happen, pick up a player here, pick up a player there. Now it's going to happen all in one fell swoop. And the Bears still have that number one waiver position, because they were the worst team in the league. They have the number one claim. So if there's a guy out there that they really want, they can go get him. And I expect the Bears to use that waiver claim position to bring in some sort of offensive lineman, whether it's on the interior or the exterior. That's where I think the Bears maybe bring in some help, is they look around the league and see, okay, what position group is really stacked? Where is a team going to have to make a really tough decision on a guy that's probably a pretty good player? And then where do we have the opportunity to pick up that player on waivers?
Right.
I'm curious, man, because for me, I see a different player this year in Larry Boone. I see a different body. I see a different guy with movement. His movements are different. I mean, he seems lighter on his feet, and I feel different about him than I did last year this time. And it adds up on tape to me when I evaluate him on tape. I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far. From your vantage point, what you've seen thus far in camp, how confident are you in Larry Bourne versus whatever your confidence was before?
Well, I would say, just first off, from a tape perspective, you as a former player, I would trust your tape evaluation over my tape evaluation. Like I am not an offensive line coach. Let's start there.
It's too general.
However, based on eye test alone, last year, I agree. It looked like Larry Bourne was struggling in this new Chris Morgan system. I haven't written him down in my notebook as much as a guy who is struggling. Right. So from that vantage point alone, yeah, probably improved. Is that enough that you feel good about him being the starting right tackle if Darnell Wright can't get healthy enough for week one? I don't know, man. I don't know just quite yet.
Okay, hold on, Sam, because I know you got something, but you mentioned the name, and I got to speak on him later. But Darnell Wright, man, what is the situation, or is it anything that you can tell us on that?
Yeah, there are things I can tell you about that. So he left practice early yesterday. It was towards the end of practice. He left. It was an apparent leg injury. Today we saw him limping around with what appeared to be an ankle brace on his right foot, to the point that like his right shoe wasn't tied so that he could fit the ankle brace in there. And, to me, he was walking with an obvious limp.
Okay. That's the farthest you can go with that, because that's all you have, right? Go ahead, Sam. I don't want to keep talking.
Obvious information there. Man, let's just move on, man, from all the injuries real quick. Alex, it's just, we don't want to turn this into a funeral type of feel. I just want to know what players have passed your eye test, during the training camp, who have been on the field for the duration that you've seen, and then what players have maybe disappointed you a little bit or not met the expectations that you thought that they would have met, where they would have been this season?
Sure. That's a good question. So 2 guys in particular. I'm going to go all defensive linemen. How about that?
Okay.
2 guys who I think have really traded blows both in practice and in preseason are Travis Gibson and Terrell Lewis. And I have no idea how. I mean, I do know how the Bears are going to make a decision between those 2. Terrell Lewis has the 2 forced fumbles. He has the 2 strip sacks. That means a lot, obviously. And if he performs similarly, like I'm borderline Terrell Lewis is a roster lock at this point, which again, I can't believe I'm saying, that to me was a big surprise. This guy, he played on the practice squad last season. I had to remind myself that he was on the practice squad last season, right? Complete afterthought entering rookie minicamp and OTAs. Meanwhile, he's just looked better and better and better, and he's just continued to flash. I think Travis Gibson has also looked much improved from last season, where last season he was almost invisible. This year he's making the plays. He's looking more like the player who had 7 sacks in his second season. So I think that's a real battle. And I think both of those guys are NFL players. And whether or not they are on the Bears, I think those guys have futures.
Great.
The one guy that I don't see, and it's interesting, and there's a few maybe explanations why. So Dominic Robinson has been ahead of each guy. And this is going back to when practices were still open. Dominic Robinson was repping ahead of each guy. He's ahead of them on the depth chart, right? But I haven't seen that same level of flash as I have with the other 2. Now, Dominic Robinson is repping against first string, higher guys on the depth chart than Travis Gibson and Terrell Lewis are. So that's one explanation, right? Travis Gibson is repping against UDFAs in some scenarios, and Travis Gibson is repping against some more established guys. Explanation why. But, we've seen Dom Rob win on stunts. Interestingly, the Bears have been really good with stunts. It's given the offensive line fits. And in those scenarios, I think he's been great. Otherwise, I think the Bears, I'm not going to speak for the Bears. I was expecting a little bit, maybe more from Dominic Robinson, especially to warrant that jump on the depth chart. I would love to see how Travis Gibson or Terrell Lewis do with Dominic Robinson's reps and how Dominic Robinson would do with the other 2 guys' reps, just to see kind of how it balances out. But for me, that's a guy where, I don't want to say disappointed, but maybe I expected a little bit more.
You know what? And Ken Davis, your colleague, came on one time. He laughed right to my face. You tell Ken when I was talking about Terrell. Tell Ken, yes, Nomad is the internal optimist, and I'm coming for his soul. I'm gonna change his way of thinking.
All right, when was this? When was this conversation with Ken?
Oh, that was a couple months ago when he came on, but he just couldn't stand that I was so optimistic, and I was just trying to tell him why, man. I see things on tape, man. I'm just sorry.
I'm gonna be honest. I would have also kind of rolled my eyes and be like, you're going pretty down the roster to pull that. Meanwhile, I mean, truly, it's a guy who I've seen incrementally improve. Where at OTAs, I've been like, who? Terrell, the Alabama guy? What? Right. But now, again, like I said, I'm pretty close to just calling him a roster lock.
I think you should be justified, man. I think he's pretty much earned it. I think, and that's funny you talk about Dom Robinson. We've had that conversation, I think, for the last 2 shows. The last 2 shows we've done, that's been exactly the conversation. And the question is, for me, and I think I know the answer to it. I think they invested in him when they drafted him, and I think this team is about development. These coaches are about development. He's new to the position, and I think they're going to give him at least another season to come along in the way that he needs to come along. And so I want to say his roster spot is safe, but you never know. But he hasn't showed it on the field. He hasn't reaped any rewards on the field whatsoever. And so, with that being said, I mean, wow. I didn't think you'd come on here and say anything about Dominic Robinson, but wow, he's not doing it in practice either, huh?
Nah. No, it is harder. I saw somebody asking about a run defense. It's really hard to judge run defense because most of the time the run installs are at jog through speed, and it's really not fair to assess. But yeah, I just haven't written down, I guess it's 90 now in my notebook as often as I'm writing down 52 and 99.
Wow.
So go ahead, Sam. You got anything?
Well, yeah, let's go to the other side of the ball. We haven't heard much about that running back competition, and it seems to be a stiff competition because we really like Khalil Herbert. I, for one, really like the other guy, and Dante Foreman. I think that he's really nice. But then this other guy, this rookie, is starting to jump up the charts as well. So, who's stood out to you, and from your eye test, who seems to have the leg up on the competition right now?
To answer your second question first, David Walker actually addressed this today. We got to speak to the offensive assistants today, which was great. I love talking to David Walker. He's a phenomenal, insightful coach. I mean, a lot of them are. I also love talking to Tyke Tolbert, John Hoke, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on and on. But I was talking with David Walker today, and basically at the beginning of the year, he said, Khalil Herbert's going to get the first crack at it, but then it's an open competition. Today, he was like, Khalil hasn't done anything to lose the job. So to me, that indicates he will still be the first man out. However, Walker was also, pretty clear in saying it's going to be a running back by committee, and we're going to need all three of those guys at certain points. And that's really how I see it. I think all three guys really can be honestly valuable, reliable running backs in many phases of the game. I don't see this as one bell cow and then some complementary pieces. I think they all complement each other really well, where let's say you give Khalil Herbert 2 series to start the game, and then you bring in Deonta Foreman for a series to give Herbert a blow. Then you bring back Herbert for a series, and then maybe you give him another blow and you give Roschon Johnson a series. They could do this running back by committee thing to keep everybody fresh so that everybody is performing effectively. Speaking to Roschon Johnson, the physicality when the pads have come out is real. I mean, we saw that in the preseason game, the last preseason game. Dude's like running through people. And that was something I asked David Walker about this a few times. Like, hey, what are you anticipating when the pads come on? He's like, I'm not anticipating anything because I know exactly what it's going to look like. And then sure enough, it's exactly what they were expecting, right? I think he said some guys look great in shorts running around, and then the pads come on and it's just okay. Some guys look just okay running around in shorts, and then the pads come on and you can see what they really do. Roschon Johnson falls in that latter camp. When they were just running around in shorts, nothing was super eye-popping. The moment the pads come on, it's like, oh, now you can see how this guy does what he really does. So for him, really the key was consistency, and he's becoming more consistent. That's not to say he's not making mistakes. We still see him make mistakes, and he will continue to make mistakes because he's a rookie, and they all make mistakes, right? And none of these guys are perfect yet. But Deonta Foreman last year, or throughout his really entire Panthers career, dude didn't catch the football a ton. He was just kind of a north-south physical runner. I'm seeing the Bears use him as a pass catcher a ton. And you know what? He's pretty darn good as a pass catcher.
Boom.
Yeah. And then Khalil Herbert, everybody here knows what Khalil Herbert brings to the table, the burst, his shiftiness, making one cut, making one guy miss and then taking off. We all know Khalil Herbert's a legit, really solid running back who fits this scheme particularly well. Again, last year, the running attack was a strength. It could low-key be even better this year.
So there's no reason to throw our draft picks in the Jonathan Taylor sweepstakes is what you're telling us.
Why'd you have to do that?
No, for what is it? A 1 year? He's got 1 year left on his deal. The Colts want a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
Honestly, Poles has to do his due diligence and call, right?
Of course.
He would not be doing his job if he did not at least call, because obviously he's young. He's incredibly talented. He's very good. But the minute I hear first round draft pick, if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm hanging up the phone because these three guys are solid. And I know Deonta Foreman is only here on a 1-year deal, but even moving forward with Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson, and then maybe you add another rookie, next year, like no worries about the running back room.
Nice to hear.
Okay, before I get away from that subject, and I hate Samuel for bringing that up because I was going to end the whole conversation with that question. But
Man.
glad he brought it up too. It was actually a beat reporter from Indy. It wasn't JJ, but I can't think of the guy's name offhand right now. But another beat reporter from Indy actually put it out there that the Bears had officially made contact with the coach, but no offer was presented at that time. So that was being put out by a Colts beat writer.
Sure. And again, that's Poles doing his job. He's got to call. He's got to ask.
Of course. Now, could you do us a favor? If you could any way, shape, or form suss any information about that out, could you let me know?
Well, that would be me doing my job now. It's now my job to go find the truth and find what's really going on. So yeah, if that just happened, if that just broke, this is the first I'm hearing of it. But again, it's completely unsurprising. I don't know how interested the Bears truly would be because they're still at the very beginning of a rebuild. Their draft picks are going to be very precious. Yes, I know they have 2 first rounders because they also have the Panthers' first round pick. But I mean, when you're talking about looking at the way Poles has built this roster in terms of like positional value, well, I guess you can kind of throw that out the window because he paid a middle linebacker a ton of money. So I'm going to argue against myself. But again, as I'm talking through it right now, I just don't see the Bears sending a first-round draft pick, one of those super valuable first-round draft picks, to the Colts, especially when it might be a top 15, top 10 draft pick, when they have a legit chance to take a step forward this year. Let's say they go from a 3-win team to a 6 or 7-win team this year. Now you add 2 first-round draft picks next year. In addition to the foundation that you've built this year, now you're cooking, right? So I think it would be short-sighted of the Bears to make a move like that. And Ryan Poles has been so disciplined, I think it would be out of character for him to make a move like that.
I think that's out of question, like you said. However, would you consider the fact that the Bears just went there and practiced with the Colts for an entire week? Maybe they fell in love with a guy on our roster that they might be willing to exchange for Jonathan Taylor and a lower round draft pick.
I mean, maybe, but again, the Bears are building their roster, not sending pieces. I don't see them sending a guy. Like, what would it take? What kind of player now you're talking about? Like,
I'm not going to name any names. There's a cornerback who wants a contract, who might not be a good fit for this defense. So.
Maybe. I think the Bears will really like Jalen Johnson, though, even though the takeaways haven't been there. And say what you will about fit or whatever and takeaways or whatever, that dude is a shutdown corner. And those are hard to find. He's a rare guy who can take away a team's number one option, shadow them across the field, no matter where they are, and shut them down. That A.J. Brown matchup that they had against the Eagles, I know A.J. Brown had pretty good stats, but that to me was a heavyweight fight. And Jalen took it to A.J. Brown a couple of times. He denied him a few big plays where anybody else, that could have been a monstrous day for A.J. Brown. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought. It's totally an interesting thought. And I see where your head's at, right? We're trading 2 guys who are rentals. But again, for a running back, for Jonathan Taylor, who is super banged up and might still be banged up, I just don't see it.
All right.
Okay. So, you know what? I got some comments about that. I'd say a 2 and maybe a 5, maybe Khalil Herbert is reasonable. More than reasonable for Jonathan Taylor, who is injured right now. but we won't have to carry that conversation forward. We'll do this after you leave. But the whole Bears community, the entire Bears community, and I speak for them right now, the biggest question they want to know from you, Alex, is how earth-changing and world-changing was Africa to you?
Oh, you want to talk Africa?
I think they're asking, man.
Fans in the chat know that I was in Africa? Amazing.
I want to know, man. You spoke about
it was
before motherland. The motherland.
True. There it is. Okay, renewable and rechargeable review. It was awesome. I mean, trip of a lifetime. Like truly. So we went to South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. I did not bless the rains because it did not rain once while we were there. I see you, J2K. But I mean, truly fantastic. I didn't really appreciate how close we could get to animals in these safari trucks and how chill and open the safari trucks were. And like the animals just seemed to not care. It was incredible. Like there was one point I could have reached my hand out of the truck and touched a lion on its nose, which is like insane. Yeah. I mean, there were moments where, you know, like a chill would go down my spine, hanging out with rhinos, hanging out with elephants. So all of that was incredible. And also the food was incredible. So I'm a guy where when I travel, I just love to eat the food and drink the drinks and all of that. Man, I fell in love with African cuisine that I never knew existed. This stuff called sadza nyama.
Okay,
what's so that? Fun. It's like this. The sadza, I believe, is this like grain stuff that you eat with your hands, and it comes with like meat and veggies and like stews and curries on the side. And basically, people are saying like, yeah, if you're for real, like you have not had a meal unless you've had sadza. Like you can eat an entire enormous feast, but if you didn't have sadza, like you did not have dinner. So that stuff was really good. There's this stuff called shakalaka. I thought Boom Shakalaka was like a thing from NBA Jam. Shakalaka is a dish, and it was super delicious. I loved it. Truly, I did not have a bad meal in the 11 or 12 days that I was there. The craziest things I ate, I had ostrich carpaccio. That was phenomenal. And I ate a variety of antelopes, including one called a kudu. And kudu is amazing, delicious. So I truly loved it. One last thing, we went to see Victoria Falls, or Mosi-oa-Tunya, I believe is what it's called in the native language. And that also blew me away. Like I thought, okay, yeah, it's going to be a big waterfall. It's going to be like Niagara Falls. It's going to be super cool, natural wonder of the world. Nope. It is so much more insane than the Niagara Falls. It is one of the most breathtaking things I've ever seen in my entire life. So truly 5 stars. If you have any desire to go to South Africa, Zimbabwe, or Zambia, check it out. It ruled.
You sold me.
I'm definitely going. What part I'm going to first is the question, but that is God's country out there. I believe it. I mean, you just taught some black men something we probably didn't even know. Boom shakalaka.
We didn't know shakalaka. I did
right?
know that.
When the dude said shakalaka, I was like, wait, like what? Delicious. But now it's like, okay, now back home, it's like I want to find a place that serves this stuff. Like that's how good it was. It's like I want to eat this again.
How were the people? You didn't say anything about the people.
Oh, very nice. Truly endearing. Super nice. Mm-hmm. So we did not interact with locals a ton just because we were doing like safaris pretty much the entire time. And then we went out to Mosi-oa-Tunya once. And that was really where we interacted with some more folks. And again, so chill. Like we went to this market. I met a dude who was also named Alex. I felt bad because like I had already bought all of these things. Like we bought a ton of art that we now have hanging in our home. We bought all these like cool things that we really liked. And I felt terrible. I was like, dude, I literally spent all the cash I have. I'm sorry. Like, you know, like literally like exactly.
Every time I go on vacation, it happens, man.
but like this guy was like also like way chilling. He's like, you know what, whatever. Take a look at anyways. Like my mom made this. We ended up talking. Really nice guy. Hospitality like through the roof. Very welcoming. Everybody was super friendly. Yeah, loved it,
man. So I know he's got to get out of here, man, and I appreciate your time, man. But I'm gonna hold you to that about the the African videos, man. I want to see it.
All right, I'll send you some African videos. I'll tease this. The craziest video that I got, we witnessed a lion attack a porcupine. Who do you think wins, lion versus porcupine?
That porcupine won.
I thought that lion would be smarter than that, right?
That's basically what our ranger said. Afterwards, he's like, I cannot believe that just happened. That lion should have been smarter than that. Right. But yeah, porcupine wins in porcupine v lion.
Send that video.
Awesome. There. Hey, send them to me private. Don't put them on out there in the open because I want to show them on the show and let people see what you have, man. But I appreciate you so much, man. Hey, give them the 411 about you and what you're doing right now.
All right, so you can find me on Twitter. My handle is right there, AlexShapiro NBCS. Of course, read all of our stuff. Myself, Josh Schrock, my colleague, who is the man as well, on NBC Sports Chicago. And then, as Nomad alluded to, we got the Under Center podcast hosted by the great Kenneth Davis, our captain. He steers the ship. So, yeah, the Under Center podcast, it's myself, Kenneth Davis, and Josh Schrock. That is on TV on NBC Sports Chicago, 5:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. I cannot believe that they still put us on TV. We haven't been canceled yet. Can you believe that? Like, us goons on television. It's insane.
Right.
And then the Under Center podcast, we have more episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube. It's a whole lot of stuff. So if you didn't get all that, I don't blame you, but go to nbcsportschicago.com, and that's where you're going to find the best Bears coverage in town.
Man, great work, Alex, man. Appreciate you so much for coming on here and giving us all that detail, man. And make sure you tell Ken I'm coming for his soul.
Will do. All right. I appreciate you guys. This is a ton of fun. Thanks again for having me, and I'm sure I will be talking to you sometime down the road.
I will. I'll be in contact soon, man. Appreciate it.
Be well, guys.
Appreciate you.